Hello, everyone. Welcome to DNA's July 2026 webinar. Coming up on 70 of these educational pieces at this point. How to rank on ChatGPT and Claude. This is the GEO, Generative Engine Optimization discussion, something we're asked about on a daily basis at this point. If you have not adopted AI into your life at this stage, there's probably a reason why. This is not a webinar about how to use it for your personal life, even as much as all the different ways you can build product with it. It's speaking directly to how to appear, how to get prospects to find your business. We work on a high volume of investor acquisition campaigns, how to get investors to find your live deal, your live offering. We're not just going to be speaking about how great ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and all these different platforms are. A lot of content about that online. We're going to give you actual framework to use to build your own agents to be able to have a strategy that produces results for you. And I've seen these different iterations of marketing, of digital, so many times at this point. Early in my career, SEO was really just becoming popularized. It had already been around for 10, 15 years. We're talking 2008, 2009. What I learned about on-site optimization and how to get search engines to rank you for the appropriate keywords, that you've done the right research to find the volumes and the competitiveness levels that were attractive to you, and what you did offsite to show authoritativeness. There are more advanced systems and functions going on in the background on these LLMs. So we're going to be talking about what to do, how important it is today, but really how this sets the right foundation for you to compete as a business a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, decades down the line. You are going to be behind if you're not taking these steps. This is not just a good thing to do or a good thing to test, as much as a necessity so that you are found in this early stage world of AI usage. I'm told it's already a third of search traffic has now migrated to these platforms, and rightfully so. You can get all types of recommendations and instructions and insights beyond just what a search engine result would show you. So that is why I am so excited about this discussion we're having today. Khalil Doheny, our head of content marketing, has become nothing short of an AI expert. I think that is a term thrown around quite a lot these days, but you will see some of the underlying science that Khalil uses on the systems that we utilize here at DNA. What we've built for our strategy product and have evolved how we launch campaigns and for stronger performance metrics. Had a campaign last week, a capital raise that hit its full $5 million goal in 37 days. It's an $843,000 investment come from an advertisement last Thursday. This is what's under the hood of what we do. We're an open book. How we put together strategies, content marketing funnels, ads, outreach. Clio is closely tied to all of those standard operating procedures, and we're going to be showing you what we use to market ourselves. We get inquiries constantly of, hey, ChatGPT said you're the best marketing agency for investor acquisition or for whatever vertical. So, Khalil, I know that's somewhat of a long introduction for you, but that is my excitement towards being on here with you today. Want to familiarize the audience a bit about yourself and why we're doing this
Yeah, of
area of focus for today's webinar.
course. Um, yeah, hello everyone. I'm Khalil. I'm head of content here at DNA. When I was talking to Jason about coming up with a topic for this month's webinar, I started to think about the first webinar that I was on with Jason, about 5 years, 5 to 6 years from 5 to 6 years ago. And the thing that we talked about was social media. And one of the things that I mentioned in that webinar specifically was social media is a modern day search engine. And I feel like now that seems so ancient. Now with the rise of AI, it's never been so easy to just go into Claude or ChatGPT and ask, what is the top 10 restaurants in a specific city, but you can now be a little bit more specific. Instead of saying what cuisine, you could say, what's a mom and pop shop that is underrated, and it can, pull up all this data that will show, the top 10 restaurants that, no one really knows about. So it's finding things that you didn't know existed. And what we're going to talk about today is how to pop up in AI when someone is asking those type of questions. How can an investor go into Claude or ChatGPT, type in, what market is booming right now, and it will show the different players that are in the game. As Jason mentioned, we've gone onto AI and typed in the best crowdfunding marketing agency, and we've popped up there. So it's the content that you're putting out. It's gonna grab content from all these different places, and it's gonna showcase and highlight your company and how to rank here.
So, Brendan, our creative director, works with the creative team to put together a deck like this every month. How to rank on ChatGPT and Claude, content authority playbook for becoming easier to find. Again, the time spent, let alone the visits to these tools, is off the charts. Uh, they're designed to have you continue asking questions and looking for more businesses, looking for more content. So you're looking to position yourself here. There are ChatGPT ads that have rolled out. Some advertisers have access to conversion pixels, others are using it more for awareness. There are different ways to use these tools to market, uh, but the actual act of becoming what they want to recommend is really the game what we're going to be looking at here today. So you'll leave with the system you can run. This is a lot different than a list of AI writing tips. Um, so I'll actually just talk about this quickly, Khalil, but prompt panel,
Yeah.
you're going to find the questions that influence revenue and or investor decisions given the type of campaign. A repeatable baseline, so testing ChatGPT search and Claude Web search under controlled conditions. Source map, turn every mention, citation, and error into a specific content action and get an understanding of where you could be appearing. Answer ready structure, so right pages AI systems can retrieve. You're designing it for them to retrieve it. Verify, summarize, and cite. Authority engine, creating original evidence and distribute it into trusted ecosystems so that it is found accordingly. We're going to talk about Reddit here. Spoiler alert. We're going to talk about Google reviews. We're going to talk about some of the priority systems and how these different platforms are weighted. You'll probably see this as sources in your AI searches today at that. And then measurement model. So track mentions, citations, accuracy treatment, and business influence. The core here, build the clearest evidence trail for a specific decision your audience is already trying to make. And what I want to emphasize there, how I learned about SEO, how I learned about digital marketing, how I learned about some of these different social platforms. Although you may look at some tactics as shortcuts, it's really not the appropriate vision towards a successful content marketing campaign, which is really how I position this. Content marketing was code for offsite SEO. It could be code for GEO at this point. Khalil was talking about us ranking. That initially happened, I'll say, organically, meaning we put out 40 to 45 podcast episodes a year, test optimize scale. Smash that subscribe button. We put out the volume of webinars that I mentioned to you, an article every other week, uh, constant social media posts. I've been a guest on I think over 100 different podcasts over the past 12 months. All of this fits into a larger content marketing strategy that shows that evidence. It creates that paper digital trail, if you will. So this is not a game of, hey, put these things out and you're going to get all of the AI searches directed towards you tomorrow as much as set up the right content foundation systems, which serve as a tool to get a higher closing rate as a whole, by the way. More trust is established, more of a more engagement from prospects. So could speak to all the great reasons to do this beyond ranking. But that's what you're going to be leaving with today is the roadmap to be able to create this evidence trail.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, AI is now being used as a decision system. We are going to talk about the different ways where you can uh, essentially protect yourself from not being shown in a sense when it comes to these systems. We're going to talk about different gridlocks and the types of prompts you can input to show up in AI and with the results when someone is trying to look for a new company to invest in or a new product to buy. You can use six different failure modes and use it as a checklist. One second, I'm having some internet issues here. Oh no, what is going on? Sorry about that.
Blue, while
Tech.
you're pulling it up, I'm just going to shout them out
Yeah,
loud here.
yeah.
But, starting with prompt, going to query fan out, source retrieval, evidence selection, fifth one being answer and citations, and then really leading to brand decision and visit, lead, or research. Um, Different trail than the six systems below. Are you back on your screen there, Khalil?
Yes, yeah, we're back here. So yeah, so six places that the system can break. And this isn't really uh anything new, right? When it comes to content, you want to add content in there that is going to show up, in Google or any Google search or anything on the internet. So you want to be as clear as possible. You want to add sources. You want to add different third-party validation. So when you are typing something to the AI, it has these different sources that it can pull from. You want to make sure that the category in your audience is clear and it's showing your audience everything that it's showcasing, right? You want to make sure that the category is easily found when they're searching you up. Add some FAQs to your content because you can type an FAQ to the AI and it could pull up your company because maybe you've answered that question on a blog post. And keep doing that. I would recommend constantly searching yourself on in AI, maybe create a co-work tool, a plugin where every week, every beginning of the week, it is doing this research to see if you are ranking, to see if you are popping up from a quick AI search.
And you can see how you're positioning for this. If you're not indexed properly, it's not even going to appear. You have to make sure that is all in place. The category and audience being too vague. All right, which category and audience are you playing for? Your digital funnels, as well as your content that's going out, need to be architected to really be playing for the right category and audience. Content answers the wrong intent, claims cannot be verified. You want to go through this not just as a checklist after the fact, but design accordingly. So, Khalil, what's Gridloom Energy?
Yeah, so Gridloom Energy, you're going to see that probably throughout the whole webinar. It's a company that we just came up with for the purpose of this webinar, and we're going to use this as an example on how to um, position this company when it comes to AI. So
Basically want to walk through the steps with you guys. So
exactly.
instead of just saying like, "Hey, you could do this or should do this," and it could be this type of vertical, we're gonna be able to demonstrate what each tactic looks like with this example here.
Yeah. So, like I said, we're going to use it as a fictional example here. So, say Gridloom provides a battery system as a service to commercial property operators. Its conversion goal, it's not going to be a generic uh, contact form. So we're going to assess its portfolio, and you want to use a prompt to see if there's traction behind this company. So every page prompt source and metric must support one of these two decisions, and the two decisions are going to be should the operator investigate a service model instead of purchasing a battery equipment? And then another decision as an investor, does the Gridloom show a clear model, credible market evidence, capable leadership, and differentiated execution? And so if the answers are unclear when the AI is prompting that answer, then maybe there's some content that you need to create to show up and answer those questions in more of a clear way. Yeah, and then back to, you want to build these prompts around the decision journey. So think if you are an investor going into AI, what are the type of questions you're going to ask? Uh, to be discovered, if you are an investor that invests in tech or batteries, you might want to ask which commercial battery providers serve multi-site operations in California. So it's being tactical with the location because you are being as clear as possible. And then the education part of it. So how does energy as a service work for commercial battery storage? Because now you're going to see like if there is um, a market there, right? And then you want to add that compassion aspect to it. So service model versus buying batteries for 50 locations. You want to keep testing different questions that might pop up in during, say like an investor Q&A webinar. Like you want to answer all these questions ahead of time. So when someone is searching you up, they're answering those questions already and show the proof. So like again, in the content, if you whenever you can show proof of any third party, you want to include that into your content. If there's a lead investor in your company, ask them to talk about your company in content. So that way, if you're doing an AI search and it's pulling up different social media feed, like you're asking to, look through different social media platforms of people talking about you, that can pop up there. And then you want to talk more about the brand. What does Gridloom do, and what its independent evidence supports it? So it's showing traction and showing credibility there. And then which providers should a portfolio operator shortlist and why? So it's kind of just asking the overall question of, is this a viable investment? Are other investors adding this company to their portfolio?
And the age-old discussion of branded versus non-branded for search engine advertising. We know it's much easier to see performance on branded. Someone's already, looking into you and knows you by name. Uh, Unbranded matters even more here than in that PPC, pay-per-click discussion, because you want to see whether you're relevant whatsoever to these platforms, to these machines. So looking at branded, cool, want to make sure it gives the right information and that you're positioning it to spit out the right content. But appearing on, as this example shows, a short list would be, whole next level there. So we built this copy to build a revenue weighted prompt panel. So, you know, you can basically set the tools up to be an AI search research analyst supporting a growth team. You can be this AI search research analyst and use this prompt to the side here. Business being this, project of Gridloom Energy, we're talking about servicing battery providers for commercial property operators managing 20 to 100 California locations. I actually speak to a decent amount of companies like this. Buyer is facilities finance or sustainability leader. The desired conversation is a portfolio feasibility assessment, audience signals, sales calls ask about upfront cost savings, guarantee operational control, installation disruption, utility incentives, and provider credibility. Search data shows interest in demand, charges battery leasing, and energy as a service. So we are going to look at the platform and say, hey, create 30 natural language prompts across discovery, education, comparison, verification, objections, and action. And for each return, we're setting it up to tell us the exact prompt, the persona and decision stage, commercial value, evidence that real audience asks it, evidence needed to answer it well, likely, source types, best content asset, test unbranded, branded, or both, and setting the right parameters, right rules around it. So do not, invent search volume, label, which is a real problem, by the way. You have to make sure it's giving you accurate numbers. Label inferred demand as a hypothesis. Avoid trivial questions unless they support a later decision. Prioritize prompts that could change a shortlist request or investment research outcome. Uh, Khalil, how many different prompts have you had to, uh, insert to be able to get to this level of
Yeah.
clarity?
Yeah. I mean, with every prompt that I ever type into I ask the AI to edit the prompt for me and to make the prompt more clear. Because who's going to make a better prompt than the AI itself, right? And so you want it to be as clear as possible, and you're literally having it do the heavy work for you. It's going to tell you exactly which prompt to type in to get what you're looking for, and you're giving it the context. So it's you should know the context of your own company, and even if you don't, you can ask the AI to explain your company in a paragraph, and then type it in to summarize it in a context form, and then include that into the AI chat. And you really want to be as specific as possible. And the answers that you get from this is the content that you're going to be creating. So when someone does search through the AI, that's the content that is coming up.
Now, you want to score the prompts before you create the content. So we have a little chart here, a little report, if you will. Value, evidence, gap, win, total, 1 to 5 rating system. So prompt providers with no upfront equipment purchase. And you can see, we're 5 on the value, 5 on the evidence, 5 on the gap, 4 on the win. So 19. We'd put that in the build now category. Service model versus buying batteries for 50 locations. A little less, 18. Is Gridloom credible and independently supported? 19. What is a commercial battery? We're not going to win as many of those. There's a larger gap. 11. So really supporting only, but basically choosing the question closest to a valuable decision where the current answer is weak and your evidence can materially improve it. You're going to want to figure out where to prioritize content development, where to prioritize everything you're putting into the infrastructure of your funnels based on these scores.
Yeah. And what I've been doing recently is asking two questions at the end of every session is because, when you are deep into the AI, sometimes it's easy to get tunnel vision and forget to see the overall picture. You want to ask it, what, according to you, what am I missing here? And is there anything that I am forgetting or I'm not thinking about? And it's going to it's going to tell you exactly the answers to those questions, and then you can add those answers back into the prompt and ask it to edit the prompt to include those oversights, right? So you're strengthening the prompt afterwards, and you're going to just get a better prompt and better response after you're doing that. Yeah. And so it's all about testing, right? So we want to uh, you always want to use different um, platforms. You don't just stick to one tool. We use both ChatGPT and Claude, but there's also other LLMs out there, and I would test every platform and see the response that it gives you. You never want to settle. You always want to just keep testing and keep expanding. So when you get an answer from the prompts, fine tune the response and ask another question. Keep doing that until you get the answer that you're looking for. And you want to make sure that the conditions that you gave it, the context in that prompt is is being clear. It's being clear in the response itself. And if you're getting an answer that's very vague, then something needs to be edited. Again, it's all about testing, and then from there, it'll be a lot easier to reuse prompts because you're spending so much time in the beginning phase fine tuning that prompt.
And Khalil, where are the best places to search to get the right analytics on, hey, even going back to the last page with value evidence gap, like how can someone calculate this right after the call? Is it additional tools or it's just asking directly into the AI of their choice?
Um, I mean, it's a little bit of both, right? So you want to show, if you're on a marketing team, ask your team, what do you guys think of these responses? And if they're not understanding what it's trying to say, or if it's just saying the same thing in 20 different ways, then something needs to be changed. But there are tools out there to connect, and there's even skills that you can create in AI that is going to kind of act as a scorecard for you. So that way you're not just guessing like, oh, I think this is a good prompt. No, it's going to do the scoring for you.
Now, want to illustrate what some of these results can look like. Baseline turns opinions into a scorecard. So 72 observations based on what we just went through there, 21 brand mentions, 9 responses citing the owned website, 18 to 21 materially accurate brand mentions, 5 of 21 recommended or shortlist. So, what do those numbers tell us? What do they reveal? Branded prompts find the company. So, doing good there. Unbranded category prompts usually do not find the company, and that's where you really want to focus. That's where you're going to find new audiences. One platform misclassifies the business as equipment financing. Want to dig into why, so that gets corrected. The product page never connects the company to multi-site portfolios. Independent category sources do not mention Gridloom. The priority from that would be not to publish another generic battery article, to fix the entity and business model description first, then create evidence capable of earning independent category coverage. So, looking to change up what is occurring around, business as equipment financing, looking to show up on more of the independent category coverage ultimately, but all through the right content strategy afterwards.
Yeah, and it's going to tell you exactly what you need to work on in your marketing strategy. If you are typing these prompts in and you're not seeing that much results around, who's talking about you, maybe that is a sign for you to do more press. Maybe that's a sign for you to get featured in different newsletters or even be on different podcasts. So it's getting more content out there. And that's really the whole reason or the whole point of this webinar is it's going to tell you really where you're at position wise in the market and who's talking about you, who's not talking about you. Are you a thought leader in the space? And like I said in the beginning, you really want to be checking these results on a week-to-week basis and see if you're popping up more. And if you're not, you're just going to have to keep putting content out there until you start showing up. And when it comes to these articles, now with in a lot of the back end of different website publishing tools, they have metadata that you should be adding in there to pop up into these AI tools. I know Wix has a feature like that where it's going to shape the different keywords that's in the article. So when you are typing stuff into the AI, your article can be more likely to pop up there.
Let's talk about the source map next.
Yeah.
AEO, GEO, used to think interchangeable, but basically, what are we looking at for the source map and what that outlines for us?
Yeah, so you want to map each source to its role, its problem. You want to come up with what is the next answer. I mean, the next action, who the owner is, and then what evidence is needed. And then from there, you're going to use those answers and fine tune the content. So you want to show what's happened, and then from there you want to assign the next action. So maybe you're going through the responses, and then parts of it is clear, and then some of it is not clear. You want to grab that content that you're creating, add it back into the AI, say, hey, this isn't correct, or this isn't clear enough. Let's see what we can do to expand on this, or even make it simpler. There's so many times where content that is getting produced, there's just saying the same thing, just 20 different ways. I know, Jason, you like to use the 313 method. So if there's any way to simplify the content, that is where you want to do it. You really want to be as clear as possible when it comes to doing all this.
We've talked about so many of these different content pieces in our content marketing webinars. I've done many of those at this point. I've talked about, copy and creative and messaging and all of those fundamentals. Everything we talk about in our strategy workshops still applies here.
Yep.
You're just doing it towards a different audience, which is an AI audience. And that AI audience is then speaking back to its users and relaying the information. But if you're not even getting to that new AI target market, you're going to be lost in the competition.
Yeah.
There's these internet browsers, these search engines. We explore today through the use of AI. I mean, people sit down and spend more time with their AI than on some of these social media platforms, which have hogged the attention online. So
Yeah.
being able to see how you change all of this up and from your product page to your guides and white papers and content pieces to your comparison charts and all of your competitor information that you're using to outshine other groups in your space, that all becomes uh, ammunition for
Mhm.
these AI tools to fire back towards their users
Yeah. One thing I
based on
also
our
want
interviews
to
too.
want to add is don't assume the AI knows you. So
Correct.
give it all the context necessary to create the best piece of content for you. And if you are adding different context, but it's still kind of outdated data or outdated talking points, then maybe it's the context that you're giving it that needs to be change up. Like for example, the source is a old founder interview. Maybe this was an interview from 10 years ago, and the direction of the company is completely different now. So you want to make sure the context that you're including into your prompts is up to date and accurate, because it is going to just utilize the information that you're given it. And we've seen problems in the past where you are given it content to work off, but you're not giving it direction on how to use that content. You want to be as clear as possible, or it's just going to give you vague answers, or it's going to give you fake answers. And but technically, it's kind of a correct answer because it's the same thing that you gave it. It's just wording it differently, and it might come off as it could be something that should be positive, but it's coming out as negative because the way that the AI is wording it and you weren't as clear as you should be.
And you want to treat ChatGPT and Claude as separate test environments. There's this debate on, how to use them again personally or as a business for a variety of use cases. This is speaking directly to the GEO conversation. ChatGPT, does it retrieve the own site? Which related searches or follow-ups appear? Does it use independent category sources? All of this is going to tell you where you need to focus next. Is the brand cited or only its evidence? Can referral URLs be tracked? Where on a Claude web search, you want to be looking at, does it retrieve current public sources? Does the source mix differ materially? Which claims receive more cautious treatment? Does it surface different competitors? Going to want to pay extra attention to that. How stable is the answer across runs? And follow-up prompts is where it's all going to happen for you. You basically want to have it list every factual statement you made about Gridloom Energy. For each, give the exact claim, source URL, type direct proof versus suggestion, conflicting source and confidence. If direct support is missing label, it is unsupported. So you don't want to combine the products into one rank. Uh, Aspects of your strategy will fit into both, but you want to make sure that you're playing your, seeking out both audiences accordingly.
Yeah, it's very important that you are clicking on every link that it's spitting out because it is utilizing content that's in the on the internet, and it could just be grabbing the headline from a Google search and is grabbing that link. But what if that link that you are clicking on is locked by a password? So it's not going to be a viable link that you can utilize in your content. It's just pulling out a headline, and it might not even be an accurate piece of content. So double check all the links. Use different platforms to, test these different links or prompts, and you can even, say that you're using Claude to get you these links. You can grab the answer that Claude gave you, go into ChatGPT, give it the exact prompt that you gave Claude, and then add to that prompt, this is the response that Claude gave me. How does your response differ from that response? Now you are going to see the difference between the two, and then from there you can kind of use the best of both worlds and combine answers together.
Well said. And pass the technical access test before rewriting content. You don't want to be going off in the wrong direction and losing time, losing resources. So priority URL checklist that you can work off of returns a 200 status with the correct canonical, indexable and linked internally, complete answer visible in rendered page in DOM, no login consent CDN or firewall obstruction. You really want to look at all of this before getting back into content development and can work with the right coaches, the right consultants. I mean, these tools can really serve as a consultant. So if you're reading this and thinking, hey, I don't know what to do on these steps, you can get the clarity directly from your agents. Um, Included in the sitemap, preview controls such as no snippet are intentional. Videos, PDF charts, and tools have text equivalents. So you want to make sure the illustrative robots policy is in place as well too for accuracy. But verify, do not assume, open the live robots.txt, review server, CDN, and firewall logs as mentioned, search logs for the relevant crawlers, and test the live URL, not staging of it. Otherwise, you could just be going backwards again and again.
Yeah, and one thing that I've mentioned is, you can create different skills in your AI with different shortcuts. So that's kind of what is shown here with these user agents. These are kind of just terms that you can name your different agent or different skill. So you don't have to go through this, type in this whole checklist. You can just use, a shortcut to do this checklist for you. So these are just examples of the different names for them. Yep. And then, so keep the SEO foundation and change the operating model. Just because we're talking about AI doesn't, it's still, SEO still matters. It's just another way of doing SEO, another way of showing up. So keep probable pages correct, canonicals. You want to have clear titles and H1s. So all of this stuff, you can say that you're creating content and you're done with it, and you've taken a look at it and you've made your edits. Add it to the AI and ask it, what am I missing here? Can you do a checklist? Am I hitting all the right text points, or am I having all the right headers to make this searchable, not just in AI, but in SEO as well? So you want to, maybe there's keywords that needs to be changed. And again, you can create these different skills and tools. So it's looking for these keywords for you. And you can ask it like, hey, how do these keywords rank by, from your research? You're asking all this stuff to give you a better response here. And things that you do want to ignore are kind of all the fluff. There is a lot of telltale signs of what is AI and what is not AI. And if you are reading it and it's clearly, you are asking the AI, it's like, make this a SEO friendly article, and it's going to come up with just some random content that has nothing to do with what you're trying to say or do. It's going to create a very generic article that is, it might show up, but it's, at the end of the day, it's your name that's behind the content that you create. You want to you want to own that content. You want it to be as strong as possible. So don't just create AI fluff because you think it's going to give you a higher ranking. Have some thought and like actually test the content and use the right tools to get the content to where you need it to be.
Going back to the page, you want to structure the page around the complete decision. So for our Gridloom dot example, commercial battery storage, California multi-site page, the commercial battery storage or multi-site California properties, the opening answers define the category audience, outcome business model, and primary limitation in 50 to 80 words. Important you're in that range. Who is this for and who is it not for? What the buyer pays, owns, controls, and remains responsible for. Service model versus purchase financing and utility programs. Procurement FAQs, how the service model works, evidence required to evaluate savings, all of these different categories, limitations, dependencies, and disqualifying conditions, author, reviewer, methodology, sources, updates, history, and next step. This will work. Why? Direct answer near the top, one section per decision branch, explicit fit and poor fit conditions, claims paired with proof, comparison criteria stayed consistent, stable authorship and update signals, and a clear next action. This is how your competitors are being found by these tools. And if you're setting up your pages with this level of detail and scrutiny in which words are actually used beyond what you think sounds good, is going to have you over time, quicker acting than SEO in many cases, but over time still, 30 days, 90 days, positioned in the answers, these, authoritative agents and, AI tools are, giving their recommendations to their users.
And it's also very important to base your prompt off your goals, right? So if your goal is to say that you're running a uh, crowdfunding campaign, you want to make sure that the content that is spitting out is catered to an investor that is looking up these different content pieces. And if you're not running a campaign and maybe you are trying to just sell a product, you want to edit the prompt to fit that goal. So make sure if there's a goal that you are working towards to, the things that you wanted to search for is answering those questions. Yeah. And again, this is talking about what's weak copy versus answer ready. So, you want to replace different adjectives with extractable answers. So weak copy, Gridloom delivers innovative clean energy solutions that unlock savings, resilience, and sustainability for forward-thinking businesses. So what this is missing, it's missing a category. It is not telling me which audience this is towards to. It's not telling me the mechanism. There's no proof here, and it's you're limited with this copy. And so what an answer ready copy would look like. Gridloom Energy, we wrote here as a fictional energy as service provider for California commercial property operators managing 20 or more sites. It designs, installs, and operates battery systems while the customer pays under a service agreement rather than purchasing equipment upfront. So the model requires suitable interval data, site interconnection economics, and long operating horizon. It is not automatically a fit for single site facilities, short leases, or properties unable to support installation work. So, and then in your next paragraph, this is where you want to add the actual proof that is going to back your copy. And then you want to give it a limitation of don't just add more adjectives, like make it as clear and as precise as possible.
You see it in a lot of the offering pages and sites these days as well. So we're implementing into our copy. So here is, evidence controlled page rewrite prompt, uh, an example you can use. So roll and approve facts. You're acting as a senior content strategist and evidence editor. You're reviewing the service page for facilities finance and sustainability leaders, evaluating battery storage across 20 to 100 California properties, approve facts, energy as a service model, designing finances, installs and operates the system, customer does not buy equipment up front, all of this being put in and not to claim guaranteed savings, universal eligibility, market leadership, or independent validation. And the required output, you're asking it for, title tag under 60 characters, H1, 60-word direct answer, each one of these best fit section, not a fit section, 6-step explanation, comparison table, 5 procurement FAQs, mark supported claims, source required, internal link recommendations, standard schema only where visible content supports it, and claim to source checklist for human review. You want it to write plainly, still speaking to your target audience and preserve uncertainty and conditions, not to invent proof. Again, can't stress that enough. The accuracy is important here, and you really need to triple check everything.
Yeah. Essentially, you also want to give it guardrails so it's not warping your context. You want to make sure you're as clear as possible, so it can't take anything and assume it's what you're trying to say. I've seen that so many times, and It's not a good look. Like I said before, like what if that you are a company that you exited and it was your first company, you exited for a huge profit, but you wrote as exited the company and sold it. It might take that context and warp it as, oh, the company failed and I didn't do so well. So you want to just be as clear as possible when you are adding all the context necessary. Yeah. And so here we're going to be talking about like the visible criteria, make recommendation more content trustworthy. So what is considered bad, why Gridloom is better than every alternative, useful, service versus purchase versus financing versus utility program. Because this is something that, a someone who is searching and wants to know more about that type of information, not, they might not know what Gridloom is or who Gridloom is. And so when they are, typing more content around the problem, your company is showing up as the solution. So it's, you're asking the differences between these different programs, and your company is right there to support it. So the decision field, upfront capital, the service avoids equipment purchase. The purchase, customer funds the equipment, financing, distributed over the term, utility program dependent. You want to just make sure that every statement that is coming out here, it links to a specific document and research, or even clearly labeled in company terms. So that way it has a higher chance of showing up.
So, going to speak about, building the cluster around the next question. Want to be intentional around that user journey, what they're going to look at next. Each asset owns one decision job, and every asset links back to the hub and forwards the next likely question. So, demanding charges across a portfolio, service model versus equipment purchase, imagine content around each of these pieces, evaluating savings model, questions to ask a provider, feasibility methodology, what makes the site unsuitable, interconnection incentive guide, resilience, and cost reduction. This is all around that core hub of commercial battery storage for multi-site properties and prompts that pull in those keywords.
Yeah, and so each asset should have its distinct job and link back to, to the main hub, and essentially guide your readers towards the next question. So it is one giant loop, and this is, more useful than producing different multiple different articles. You're producing one article and answering all the questions all at once.
And have another prompt here where it's turning expertise into retrievable multimedia. So you have your source statement, commercial batteries, commercial battery projects often stall before equipment selection. The operator may have utility bills but no interval data, no site ownership map, and no agreed definition of resilience. This missing input matters more than a polished vendor proposal. So you're setting up that guardrail to use the statement as the only source, not to invent statistics or attribute new claims to the speaker. And with the recommendations, you're going to want to have three exact quotations, two LinkedIn posts, procurement FAQ answer, claims needing support, source types to verify, five question led chapters, 150 word articles section, and a 100-word summary. All of this so that you're appearing in the right spot.
Yeah. And Jason, I know you wanted to talk about Reddit a little bit. Maybe we can talk about that for a minute before the webinar ends here.
Yeah. And can make this deck available to anyone who reaches out here. Also have the video published, but essentially, firing through the last pages here before we get to edit, auditing existing content with the decision rule. So looking at each of your different content pieces and going first where business value and visibility gap are both high. Now where the editorial calendar happens to be empty. Have a section here on earning authority with something worth citing. Kind of fits into some of these channel conversations. Participate without manufacturing consensus. So have a value first community response and an honest review response. Turn one evidence asset into a distribution system, source of truth, and around each of these areas. So the benchmarks for earned and partner, expert, paid amplification, this is where some of that's going to show up and measuring the answer, not only the click. So really coming down to the metrics, the reports to determine what's coming through in your share of voice and what is actually landing and populating appropriately here, matching the intervention to the diagnosed failure. This is going to be an ongoing process and steps around that, as well as using AI as evidence controlled content operator and being able to put the right prompts, have another agent instruction here that you can actually use. And with the actual language for using a monitoring agent to detect answer drift. Uh, Another one for applying the same system to investor discovery for investor acquisition campaigns. So exact investor research prompt you can put in as well as the investor content footprint. I've done all the work here for you. This is physically what we use. But to start, you'd want to leave with one diagnosed problem and one accountable owner. Choose, test, map, fix, assign. We're happy to have a visibility assessment with you and show you what we're seeing and give recommendations around it. As Khalil mentioned, a Reddit strategy we've found to have the most, authoritativeness and activity here. Reddit is anonymous. Reddit has very strong regulation systems to be able to pull out, fake accounts and promotional marketing accordingly. Um, Putting out good content there can help bury bad commentary. Putting out um, different items that are read for the searches for everything you've put together here to figure out where you actually want to compete is going to, make all the difference. I find this to be a much more impactful approach than Reddit advertising. Easier said than done, of course. Also, the Google reviews. And other review platforms, but Google seems to be prioritized. And these tools will actually look at who's reviewing there, not the anonymous structure, and can assess, hey, is this a real review? Is this some type of trade or, someone that the owner knows or, something along those lines? If it's a CEO, it's going to be able to pull that in job title information from what we've seen and be able to give you more weight in everything you're putting out on your pages, on your content as described here. So it would absolutely be incorporating Reddit, Google reviews, and continuing to ask these tools where you should be prioritizing content distribution so that you have better real estate in the prompts that users are receiving from there.
Yeah. Jason, I bet you there's someone listening to this webinar right now and saying to themselves, I thought AI was supposed to make everything easier. Why is this why is, this seems a lot more work than a standard marketing plan. What do you say to that question?
The word easy is open for interpretation. We just gave the exact groundwork. You could use tools to create content. Have to have the right captain behind the helm, behind the wheel of the ship there, to be able to really gauge what is of quality, what makes sense for the target audiences. It's not just spitting out, computer AI language, but putting in the groundwork here to do business in the AI era, which isn't a fad. It's not going away. This is what everything's going to be built upon here, short of some type of, you know, digital collapse. Uh, this is where you have to invest instead of building, a physical location for many businesses as you would do decades back. Uh, this is where you need to compete. So although it may seem more complicated, once you have your initial build that is designed to really be able to grow in this AI world, it's a matter of where to create content, where to pull from audience, client, customer, investor responses, and shape what's going out there. But it will make growth feel easier and more systematic over time. But with that up front and with the ongoing management.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think we covered a lot of ground here. I know a lot of people are were worried that AI is going to take their jobs, but if anything, I think it's going to add more jobs. That you need to learn these different tools and different ways to implement because this is, like you said, Jason, it's staying, it's not going anywhere. And if you don't learn these tactics or these tools, you are going to be left behind. And it's you don't want to be left behind. You want to be out there with the winners and utilize these tools to your advantage.
Everyone and their mom are using these tools.
Yep.
They'll give you all the answers. You just have to know what to ask for, what to look for, and have the right instructions, the right directions. So replay this webinar, pull, the scripts, pull what you need to put into the prompts, and outshine your competitors as your target audiences, your clients, customers, investors, future, potentials are looking for you and are getting directed, recommended towards you and what you do. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Honored to be able to walk through all of this with you, hopefully, to be the guide, the voice of reason on why GEO is necessary and should be part of your marketing strategy and will be studied in schools as a fundamental aspect of how to build your business from this point forward. Hope you take these actions after watching with us today, viewing with us today, participating with us today, and feel free to reach out with any questions. We are here to support.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.